If you've ever thought of curriculum planning as just filling out templates, I'm here to tell you there's a better way. We're going to completely reframe that whole process and turn it from a chore into what it really is, the creative act of designing an absolutely unforgettable educational journey for your students. So here's our game plan for today. We're going to start with the big why this all matters so much. Then we'll hit the single most important principle, starting with the end in mind. After that, we'll zoom out to map the big picture, then zoom right back in to design the daily journey. And we'll wrap it all up with the mindset that makes a curriculum a living, breathing thing. So, why do we care so much about planning? Well, because without a map, a curriculum is just unmapped territory. And for students, that can mean total confusion, frustrating repetition, and just massive gaps in their learning. Our job, really, is to be the cartographers, to chart a clear, intentional path through that wilderness of knowledge. And wow, this quote from curriculum expert Heidi Hayes Jacobs just nails it, right? It perfectly captures what it feels like for a student when the curriculum is disconnected. I mean, we've all been there. That feeling of classroom déjà vu, it's a classic sign of a system where nobody has a clear map of the entire trip. This right here, this is the crucial shift in thinking we have to make. For way too long, curriculum has been treated like some loose guideline you see on the left, all based on assumptions. Think of those old dusty binders. If you left one on the bus, the entire fourth grade curriculum was just gone. But the modern approach, on the right, treats it like an operational map. Kind of like a doctor's chart, it's a living history. You're using real-time data to make smart decisions for the actual students sitting right in front of you. Okay, so how do we actually create that operational map? Well, it all starts with the single most powerful idea in all of curriculum design. You have to start with your destination in mind. I mean, you can't chart a course if you don't even know where you're going, right? And that brings us to this idea of backwards design, which was really pioneered by Wiggins and McTighe. This is our North Star. So instead of asking, okay, what book am I going to read on Monday? You start by asking, what do I want my students to know or be able to do at the very end of all this? Once you know that, then you figure out the evidence. What assessment, what project will prove they've actually gotten there? And only then, only at the very end, do you plan the day-to-day lessons that'll get them to that destination. This process is basically backwards design in action. You can see the flow, right? From those huge program goals all the way down to the final tests. But here's the key. Those arrows aren't just a one-way street. The most critical part is constantly circling back to check that everything is aligned. Does this little activity actually help us meet that big objective? Does this test really measure the goal we set way back at the beginning? That constant checking is what makes the map work. All right, now that we've got that core principle down, let's zoom all the way out to the big picture. How does this work across an entire school? And for this, the International Baccalaureate, or IB, gives us a fantastic model for this kind of large-scale planning. So the IB says a school's curriculum has to be articulated in two different directions. First, you have vertical articulation. That's making sure what a student learns in third grade logically sets them up for success in fourth grade. Then you've got horizontal articulation. That's making sure that what a kid is learning in science and social studies in the same year actually connect to each other. It creates one coherent experience, not just a bunch of separate, siloed subjects. And the IB's main tool for doing this is something called the program of inquiry. The key word here is transdisciplinary. It's not just about linking subjects together. It's about organizing all of the learning around big, important ideas that actually transcend any single subject like science or history. And here they are, the 6 themes. They're built on what one educator called our human commonalities. I mean, look at them. They're universally significant. They allow students, no matter where they are, to connect to what they're learning in the classroom to globally relevant issues. This is how the IB organizes the entire program, making sure every student gets to dig into these big ideas every single year. Now, here's a really powerful way you can communicate this big picture map. Think of it as a story. A curriculum storyboard like this one goes way beyond just a list of units. It creates a visual narrative for the whole year. It actually shows students and their families the journey you're inviting them on. And it makes the purpose of the whole year so much more transparent and, well, exciting. Okay, so we've mapped the entire territory. Now it's time to zoom right in on the individual roads, the specific landmarks. How does this huge grand plan translate into the day-to-day work of designing lessons for your students? This is the question, isn't it? This is what's at the heart of every teacher's Sunday evening planning session. You've got the standards, you've got your students. How in the world do you bridge that gap with lessons that are genuinely effective?
Sometimes the hardest part of planning is just unpacking those really dense educational standards into clear goals. But this is where modern tools can be an amazing partner. Here, you see a teacher feeding a complex standard into an AI assistant, and look what it does. It breaks it down into clear, actionable, measurable learning objectives. This is an absolute game changer for making sure your lessons are truly rigorous and aligned to your goals.
And this brings us to something that is so important. Great planning is a team sport. It is not a solo mission. The IB framework actually gets this, and it requires schools to build in dedicated time for teachers to plan together. Because that's where the magic happens. That's where those vital cross-curricular connections get made, turning the curriculum into a coherent journey instead of just a series of separate classes.
All right, we've mapped the journey from the entire program all the way down to a single lesson. But the final, and honestly the most important mindset shift is this. Your map is never finished. It is not a static document you make in August and then just file away.
I just love this quote. It reminds us that a curriculum map has to be a dynamic, living document. Knowledge doesn't stop, and our students certainly don't stop changing. The map has to be constantly updated, informed by what our students show us, and renewed based on the real learners in the room. It's a constant pattern of renewal. And really, this might be the biggest takeaway of all. The real challenge of curriculum mapping isn't just deciding what you're going to teach, it's having the discipline to decide what you're not going to teach. There's just too much stuff. A great map is a system that helps you make deliberate, thoughtful, and sometimes tough choices about what is most essential for your students. So as you get ready to step into your own classrooms, this is the question to hold on to. You're not just covering a list of standards, you are crafting an experience. You are telling a story. And by planning with intention, with purpose, and with a little bit of artistry, you can transform that simple list of topics into a truly unforgettable journey for every single one of your students.